Medieval to Modern, from Gutenberg to Google. Thus far, we have traveled through time and focused a good bit of attention on the ancient world and on Europe. But now let's turn our attention to the United States and see how libraries have progressed. In Europe, countries tended to be small and close together, and the entire continent would fit neatly into the middle of the United States with lots of room left over. In the early days of this country, books were scarce and very expensive. Thus, it was hard to share them over long distances. Unless a person was wealthy or highly educated, it was unlikely that they would have much access to reading materials. Many were, in fact, illiterate. We began to expand through buying land, wars, treaties, and displacement of Native American Indians. By way of roads, canals, and railroads, we spread out. We spread way out in terms of making books available to people. Books were scarce. Distances were huge. Churches were still highly involved with helping people to learn. Businesses kept records about crops and livestock. There was a lot of political turmoil happening between all of the wars and treaties and the growing determination to break from England. People were trying to make sense of all of these things. People were reading, talking, debating, sharing information with each other in any way they could find. Here are a few of the key people who were very instrumental in the development and spread of libraries. Benjamin Franklin founded public libraries. Andrew Carnegie planted libraries. Melville Dewey professionalized libraries. Let's take a closer look at each of these. We know that Benjamin Franklin was well educated in many areas. We know him as an author, printer, politician, scientist, inventor, philosopher, and more. But how did he know so much about so many things? He read, and he met with others to discuss and debate things. There is no evidence that he ever attended or graduated from an institution of higher education. At age 21, with his printing business established in Philadelphia and his circle of friends expanding, Benjamin Franklin formed a weekly discussion group with 12 men who shared his drive for learning and conversation. Named the Junto, which is derived from the Spanish to join, the club met every Friday evening in a tavern or house to discuss morals, politics, or natural philosophy, otherwise known as science. Soon the group gathered books from the members' personal libraries into a lending library for the Junto, the beginnings of the first lending library in the colonies. The members were drawn from various occupations and backgrounds, but they all shared a spirit of inquiry and a desire to improve themselves, their community, and to help others. Among the original members were printers, surveyors, a cabinet maker, a clerk, and a bartender. Although most of the members were older than Franklin, he was clearly their leader. Their evening meetings on Friday were organized around a series of questions that Franklin devised, covering a range of intellectual, personal, business, and community topics. These questions were used as a springboard for discussion and community action. In fact, through the Junto, Franklin promoted such concepts as volunteer firefighting clubs, improved security, or otherwise known as night watchmen, and a public hospital. This does not sound so different from what happened in ancient Greece. 4 years later, Franklin founded the Library Company of Philadelphia, America's first successful lending library. It was a subscription library supported by its shareholders, and still is to this day. In 1731, Franklin convinced members of his junta to pool their resources and purchase a collection of books that none of them could have afforded on their own. Each agreed to contribute 40 shillings and to pay 10 shillings a year thereafter. Until the 1850s, it was the largest library in America, and it reflected the interests of the members and the nation. 2.5 centuries later, you can still join it today. For $50, you can join at the scholar level. At $75, you can be at the friend level, or you can name your own amount and be a shareholder. They have a great website at librarycompany.org. I think Benjamin Franklin would be pleased. Born in Scotland to a family of mill workers, Carnegie grew to be the wealthiest man in the world. As a small boy, he and other boys from the town were invited to read once a week in the private library of a wealthy man. In appreciation, Carnegie also became a philanthropist, wanting to repay the kindness and to help others to succeed as he had. He understood the importance of libraries as collections. He understood the importance of libraries as place. He built 2,509 of them all over the world, and they are beautiful examples of architecture. He understood the importance of libraries as service, as he required a central librarian desk and for the town to help support this with tax money so that it would be sustainable. The third of these men was Melville Dewey. Yes, his name is spelled Melville. He changed it from the more traditional spelling when, as a young adult, he was leading an effort for spelling reform. He wanted to be efficient in all things. He is best known for his classification system, the Dewey Decimal System, but he played many roles in the growth of libraries. Dewey was a founder of the American Library Association and edited the Library Journal. Topics in that journal included the best practices for running libraries, discussions on the library processes, and a place for librarians to connect with each other. It was said that regular reading of Library Journal would make, quote, the librarian worth more to the library and the library worth more to the people, unquote. Dewey was among the first to promote professional education for librarians and founded the first American library school at Columbia University. The Dewey Decimal System is not nearly as complicated as people would like to believe. There are 10 major categories. Each can be broken down further, and then the dreaded decimal point makes it possible to break it down even further. The whole idea is to shelf books with the same topic next to each other on the shelves, so that a person can locate a book quickly, or find things by browsing. But don't worry, you don't have to memorize it. Throughout the 1800s and 1900s, each time a new technology came along, there were new things for libraries to collect. Music, printed and recorded, was becoming more commonly available. In the medieval days, you had to be physically present to hear it, and printed copies of music were rare and expensive. As photography emerged in the 1840s, there were images to be collected, organized, preserved, and shared. Maps have been collected at the Library of Congress since 1866, and as of March 2017, there are 18,783,005 of them. They have things like history, geography, they reflect changes in social issues of every kind, and these can be traced on the maps, and many of them are quite beautiful. The Upshur County Public Library announced this month that they are now offering a toy library. Other libraries have offered collections of everything from fancy cake pans to garden tools to seeds. It all depends on the people being served by a particular library and their needs. Services have changed as well. Mobility is different. In the early 1900s, the population of the United States was much more rural, and people did not always have easy transportation to town, where there may or may not be a library. So, libraries went to the people. Just 7 years later, the very same library, the Washington County Free Library in Hagerstown, Maryland, introduced a new, updated version of that service, with the automobile. But what about the people? It's not only the collections and services that have changed. People today need and expect different things than they did in medieval times. I wonder if they had these types of problems with scrolls or clay tablets. So far in our class, we have seen storytellers, scribes, and sages. We have begun to think about where libraries came from. We have begun to realize that someone has always collected, organized, preserved, and shared information and stories for future generations, for us. So we also have to consider who is on the receiving end of all of this. How have library users changed? What do they need or want? How do they see libraries? Or do they? Many methods have existed for writing. Each new method used the materials that were plentiful: clay, papyrus, paper. Each new method used new technologies. Today, electronic format materials are part of a revolution, just as the Gutenberg press was in its day. Finding the things that had been collected became more challenging with the information explosion. What if a card was not yet filed, or filed incorrectly, or someone didn't bother to make the particular subject card that was critical for our search? What if we could not get to the library during operating hours in order to search the catalog? How was a student to know if the library had material on the topic for their paper? By and large, card catalogs were not mourned by librarians. We had to type the cards with very strict rules for spacing and punctuation. We had to file the cards, and each book might require a title card, an author card, and many, many subject cards. Now we can type the information into the correct field in the online catalog, and it is all magically available for searching from anywhere. Earlier in this class, we saw that books in medieval libraries were actually chained to the shelves. Happily, we are now free to browse the shelves freely in order to discover things for ourselves. Today, we also find people of all ages expecting to find and use computers in libraries. This is a scene I see often in the library today. Books, journals, newspapers in print in the background. Laptop, iPad, and cell phone all being used, or at least nearby. Today's library user expects to be comfortable and to have easy access to information at his or her fingertips. In his book, Viral, Leonard Sweet suggests that there has been a cultural shift. He defines people as being a Gutenberger, old school, or a Googler, fully technology focused. It is a book about the effect of his cultural shift on the church, but I find it to be extremely relevant in thinking about who is using libraries as well. Gutenbergers tend to use the word text as a noun, something that you can see or hold. These folks would prefer print books and are not fans of electronic ones. Googlers, on the other hand, use the word text as a verb, something that you do. They want to be connected to information, to other resources, to other people. Sweet defines these people as someone who was born after 1974. That is the year that the cell phone was invented and communication was changed forever. Now people do not have to be in a specific place at a specific time in order to communicate with each other. I had the opportunity to meet Leonard Sweet after about a year of talking with students about his book. At that time, students had been very annoyed with his designations and his assumptions about their reading preferences. Many college students tell me that they always prefer a print book when that is an option. Some do not like electronic at all. They want something they can hold in their hand, write notes in the margins, or flip back and forth between sections. But at the same time, they do tend to enjoy the part about searching the full text, having it available at a moment's notice from wherever they are, and being able to copy and paste quotations rather than having to write or type them out. So I told Leonard Sweet that students at West Virginia Wesleyan College consider themselves to be Googleburgers. This is a term one student in the class came up with that was received enthusiastically by the others. Leonard Sweet loved it. In Journal 3.1, tell how you see yourself among these groups and why. So, if you were born after 1974, you are a native to the digital culture. You do not need to access information through authority figures like parents or professors. You certainly don't need for a librarian to unlock the book from the shelf for you. You don't have to wait for a priest to interpret things to you as they did before the Protestant Reformation. You have the freedom to explore for yourself, to read for yourself, and to think for yourself. If you were born before 1974, you're an immigrant to the digital culture. Immigrants need to learn the language and customs of a new culture, and many are still doing just that. But age doesn't really have anything to do with this at all. My parents are in their 80s. They've always been excited to explore new technologies. They were the first people to have a microwave when others questioned why it was necessary. They were the first people I knew to see the amazing advantages of personal computers. They each have an iPhone and the latest iPads. They have embraced digital photography, resulting in about 20 external hard drives in their house to back everything up. Explorers value the traditional things while being excited about the new possibilities of new technologies. Libraries often find themselves caught between all of these things. We collect and preserve old things like natives. We learn new languages and customs and serve many natives, immigrants, and explorers. We explore all of the new technology which makes digitization possible and necessary. We need to listen to the natives of the digital culture. Another great book that I've enjoyed is Marketing Today's Academic Library by Brian Matthews. He spends a good bit of the book talking about the types of people we are likely to encounter in academic libraries today. Let's look at each of these a bit closer. Connoisseurs are expert judges in matters of taste. In the library, that may mean that they know all about the collections that are available to them. They understand about all of the services that are offered. These people have very high expectations about how the library can benefit them. They often tell others about all of these things and can't understand why everyone doesn't get it. The regulars spend a lot of time in the library. They tend to see libraries primarily as a place, although they do access at least some of the collections. They may not know about some of them, though, especially the electronic resources that are not readily visible. Irregular guests go to the library for class or to meet a group, or if they have to read something that is on reserve. Otherwise, they don't find any reason to be there. For these people, going to the library is something to check off their to-do list. Vacationers stop by the library. In the days before everyone had a cell phone, they would stop by to use the computers to check their email. They are frequent visitors at the Café Libros, where they come for both the coffee and to visit with others who may just happen to be there. The library is not actually a destination for these people, but more of a stop along the way. The Invisibles. There are some students who actually brag about graduating without ever having set foot in the library. This is difficult at Wesleyan because you have to be in the library for registration at least once a year. You are likely to have had classes in the building. You are likely to have been assigned to be here for a group meeting. Anyway, what's the big deal? Everything they need is on Wikipedia or Google. From the perspective of a librarian, I'm a bit sad for these folks because they've missed a lot. Assignment. What are your thoughts about the different types of library users? Include your answers in entry 3.1. Librarians need to know the users in their audience, and that the same people may have a variety of needs or preferences at different stages of their journeys. There are things that need to be collected for each. There are services that need to be provided for each. Congratulations! You have finished the interactive lesson Medieval to Modern. You have considered Gutenbergers and Googlers and Googleburgers. Be sure that you have written your entries about the following things in Journal Entry 3.1.